It was the final meal together, an occasion both sacred and somber. The room was quiet, its ambience softly illuminated by flickering oil lamps that cast gentle shadows on the walls. The comforting aroma of roasted herbs and freshly baked bread lingered in the air, mingling with an unspoken anticipation. Outside, the streets of Jerusalem buzzed with the lively noise of Passover preparations, a cacophony of vendors hawking their goods, families gathering, and children laughing in anticipation of the festivities. But inside that dim room, the atmosphere was profoundly still, enveloped in the sacredness of the moment. Jesus sat at the center of the table, surrounded by his closest disciples, men who had followed him closely, witnessing his miracles and hearing his teachings. They shared food and stories, their laughter mingling with a sense of camaraderie, yet unawareness flickered among them. The weight of the evening would soon be revealed, but for now they enjoyed each other's company, oblivious to the significance of this final gathering. Then, without warning, Jesus stood. The disciples glanced at one another, puzzled by the abrupt movement. He removed his outer garment, revealing a simple tunic underneath that spoke of humble origins. When he wrapped a towel around his waist, the room fell into a profound silence, an unsteady stillness hanging in the air like an electric charge. What happened next was beyond their comprehension. The teacher, the master, the one who had calmed storms, healed the sick and raised the dead, was kneeling. The sight was shocking. They had always seen him as their leader, their protector, the Messiah who walked among them, and yet here he was, assuming the posture of a servant. One by one, he moved towards them, not with power or authority but with a humble heart, armed only with a basin of water and a towel. They watched as he knelt before each disciple, taking their dusty, calloused feet into his hands. It was a task reserved for the lowest servant in the household, not for the one they called Lord. No one knew what to say. An air of disbelief hung thick among them, a mixture of confusion and reverence. When he reached Peter, their most outspoken disciple, the protest came swiftly. Peter, wide-eyed and incredulous, pulled back. "Lord," he exclaimed, "are you going to wash my feet?" His voice carried disbelief and concern, unable to fathom that his master would undertake such a menial duty. Jesus looked at Peter with gentle understanding. "You don't understand now," he responded quietly, "but you will." But to Peter, the rule was clear. The Lord should not be performing such a lowly task. "No," Peter insisted, shaking his head. "You will never wash my feet." With calm resolve, Jesus replied, "If I do not wash you, you have no part with me." The words pierced through Peter, causing his heart to tremble. In that moment, the significance of the exchange became clear. "Then not just my feet," he cried out, "but my hands and my head as well." The desire to be close to Jesus outweighed his initial resistance. And so, the king continued to kneel, the Son of God humbling himself in a way that would forever change the narrative of leadership and greatness. Each foot he washed spoke volumes about the heart of God, a poignant illustration of sacrificial love. He poured water over the dusty feet, wiping them clean with the towel he had wrapped around his waist, each movement executed with tenderness as if he were proclaiming a truth that would echo throughout time. When he finished, he stood once more, the ritual complete. He removed the towel and put back on his outer garment. Sitting down again, he gazed at his disciples, ready to share the profound lesson encapsulated in his actions. "Do you understand what I have done for you?" he asked, his voice steady and purposeful. There was an expectant weight to his question, as if he were urging them to see beyond the physical act of foot washing. "You call me teacher and Lord," he continued, "and you are right. But if I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet." The room became still, the air thick with the gravity of his message. This wasn't just a call to serve. It was an invitation to embody humility. "I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you." The simplicity of his teaching was remarkable in its complexity. In an empire that revered power and status, Jesus was redefining greatness, not as something to strive for, but as an attitude of the heart to cultivate. He didn't come to be served, but to serve. In doing so, he showed the world what love truly looks like. It is not about wearing a crown or donning fine robes, but about putting aside one's status to meet the needs of others. He was teaching them that greatness is not found in lording authority over others, but in the humility of kneeling to lift others up. That night, before the cross, before the betrayal, before the crown of thorns and the agony that would follow, Jesus chose a basin and a towel. The symbolism was profound, a gesture of vulnerability and love that exemplified his mission on earth. He was preparing his disciples for the future, urging them to embody a spirit of service that would transcend their fears and their closeness to power. And in that moment, the King of Heaven became the servant of men. As he imparted this lesson, the atmosphere in the room changed irreversibly. The disciples were not just witnesses but participants in a divine mystery. They witnessed the embodiment of love, humility, and service that would propel them forward into a world sorely in need of such examples. As the echoes of that sacred night faded, the impact of Jesus' actions would resonate through the ages. His disciples, transformed by this encounter, would go out into the world, preaching and living the message of humility and service that their Master had modeled for them. The act of washing feet, though simple, would become a profound symbol of the love that knows no bounds, a love that sees the worth in everyone, regardless of their station in life. And so, the room, once a place of confusion and uncertainty, became a sacred ground for a revolution of love and servant leadership. From that night on, the act of washing feet was solidified in the hearts of the disciples, not as a mere task, but as a lifelong practice of love, compassion, and selflessness. The story of the Last Supper transcended time, embodying the essence of what it means to live for others. It reminds all who call upon his name that true greatness lies not in accolades or titles but in the quiet acts of love and service we extend to one another. Love doesn't demand recognition, it simply kneels to lift. In a world often driven by self-interest, the invitation to serve remains ever so relevant. We are urged to pick up our own towels, symbolically binding ourselves to the same servitude. Jesus' perfect example leads the way. The act of washing feet turns into an emblem of hope and redemption, illustrating that everyone can be touched by that transformative love. The room that night, where Jesus washed his disciples' feet, was never the same again. The living testimony of that humble act would ripple throughout history, calling countless individuals to embrace the call to servanthood, a legacy that endures to this day.